Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. My name is Day 9, and I am here ready and set for part number 2 of this interview with none other than Vibe from Team Root, who is representing the North American continent, the WCS Finals. We're getting a chance to hear about your history, sort of growing up playing games in part 1. And in part number 2, we're beginning right as StarCraft 2 has been released. And I know that you said right out the gate, you instantly started trying to compete and play in them tourneys.
That's right. I remember back in the beta, what I actually told myself was I already knew about TeamLiquid.net. I told myself I was gonna try and stream and get on that streamer list as quick as possible. So I was gonna stream everything I did, and then I was going to compete in every single tournament. Like when you go to Team Liquid and you go to the tournaments tab, I would literally look at everything that was like in the upcoming future, and I would sign up for everything. And I actually had to make this like notepad on my desktop that was like tournament schedule, because it's so easy to forget about stuff when you sign up for like 30 things or like 20 things. So I was literally like making that my full-time job. Whenever I had free time and I knew I could play in a tournament, I would just sign up for it. And I wanted to just try and like break out as quick as I could. That was like my whole goal.
I mean, like how many tournaments a week are we talking? Because I mean, I've never
I
had the notepad problem.
I'd play probably like two a day, 2 or 3 a day. And then if I ended up losing a tournament, like if I would give myself like a time frame where I'd like have a tournament and I would sign up for one like 5 hours later or something like that. But if I lost the tournament really early, I would just go sign up for something else immediately right away and just try to go with it. So I would end up playing probably like 2 or 3 tournaments every single day on average. This is kind of a lot. I was playing like
Yeah,
probably
that's
20 tournaments a week.
well. I mean, what was that experience like playing and competing in every single game, having largely played like with your buddies socially, or were you like really competitive in your growing up playing?
I would say it was a new experience. It was like a new aspect on playing the game for me, because I actually like these tournaments I was signing up for, like all of them, it was a new thing to me because they all had money prize pools. Even though some of them or a lot of them were really small, it was like $40 prize pools, $30 prize pools, whatever. It was just a new thing for me because it added on like another aspect to the game for me. Because
Yeah,
I was thinking to my like, if I can win these, if I can win a lot of these, I could actually start making a decent amount of money, and like I could just like invest myself into doing this, and I could actually make a gamer living with this kind of a lifestyle,
with the fist.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Gamer living. But I was just trying to compete in as many as I could, and then it was really nerve wracking for me when I first started, because like every round I would play in, I would be like, okay, I'm in the first round today, my first few tournaments. So it was kind of nervous because I was like, okay, this is a tournament. I could actually make some money with this if I do well. So let's see how it goes. And then I started getting over that kind of a hump, and then it would just like that a new wall would come at me like every single few rounds, like that I get deeper into tournaments. Like at the first time I started playing, the first round was always the nerve wracking thing. But then it started being like when I started making top 32s, it would be kind of nerve wracking. When I started making top 16s, it would be kind of nerve wracking because I'd be like, I've never been this far, and
Yeah, yeah.
this could be the one. It could be that tournament. I could just win it. It was always it could be, and then I ended up. It took me probably like a few months of doing this, where I would just sign up for a ton of tournaments and make progress through them. But then eventually, I got to this one tournament where it was called. I remember the name of it too. It was called Blood of the Fallen Tournament. It was like a 250 bracket tournament player pool.
Yeah.
But like I ended up making it to the finals of that tournament, and that was the first finals of any tournament with a prize pool that I've ever been in. And I was really nervous. Like that was probably the most nervous of any tournament I've ever been in. And I remember I ended up winning the first game, and I lost the second game. And
Okay, wait. I'm gonna interrupt you right now. You say it's the most nervous you've ever been in any tournament. Like, what's going on with your body in this tournament? Is like your heart racing or your hands
yeah,
cold?
like, like
Tell me your physiology at this moment.
I'd say I'd be more nervous before the tournament actually starts, like before the game starts, and then when I'm actually playing it. Because when I start playing it, I feel like I start to kind of just more or less focus on the game and not what could be happening just a few minutes from now. But like the most nervous part for me is like when I'm in the lobby and it's like, are you guys ready to go? And I'm like, my heart's beating really fast. My hands are starting to shake a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And then it goes to the loading screen, and I'm like, all right, I got to do this really well. I got to do this really well. I got to try and win. I got to try and win. And I'm just like psyching myself out, kind of like I got to do well. And then
Yeah.
well, as soon as you start getting into the game, like you start to just focus on the game, and then I would say key points in the game, more or less, like kind of fire your nerves when it's like, oh, I just messed up really bad, and you're like, oh man, I'm getting really nervous, so I might lose. Or if it's like, oh, I just did a really good attack, and it's the same thing. You're like, oh, I'm kind of nervous, I might win, and this is getting awesome. Like I'm about to win this game, but then like it's just like a battle of the nerves, I guess. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I would say definitely the big part is like right before the game start, right in those loading screens when you're like, okay, here we go, next
Yeah.
game, let's do it.
And you have no control at all. You literally
Yeah,
just have to sit there and wait for the game to start.
pretty much, man. It gets kind of nerve wracking.
So you said that you went 1-1, and then it's time for game three.
At that point, I'm thinking, uh, well, I hope I don't lose this. It's my first finals. It would be awesome if I won, but if I lose, I can at least be proud of myself that I made the finals. But I definitely wanted to win, so I just tried to like stay as calm as I could, but I definitely couldn't because not only am I nervous at myself, like thinking I could win this, but I got my brother. I'm like talking to my brother because I'm really excited. I'm like, dude, I'm in the finals of a tournament, and if I win this, I'm gonna win like $80. So this is pretty awesome. And he's over there like, cheering me on. But like, not only am I, it's awesome that he's supporting me, but it's also nervous thinking that like, okay, I got people watching me, not only like online, but behind me basically, or like in the same house as me. So it's kind of that added to like the nerd issues, I guess, and it's something else you gotta kind of deal with and put out of your mind while you're playing.
But so you eventually ended up winning and securing yourself 80 US American dollars.
Or so I thought. What
The
happened was,
drama.
yeah, it was actually a little unfortunate. It was this is the first tournament that this happened to me, and I'll say also it's the only tournament this has ever happened to me in, where I signed up for a tournament, I played it, it's all legit, like the whole tournament played out really well, but then when it comes time for prize pools, like the communications just cease to exist, like nothing happens, and you're like, all right, maybe we'll get like future emails, or maybe it's just gonna happen tomorrow or something. But the tournament admin, he kind of just disappeared. And then I remember one thing that's actually kind of funny was like 3 months down the road, I actually, now that I think about it, I remember seeing him. I saw him on BattleNet, and I messaged him, and I was like, hey man, so about that tournament. And then I remember he logged off at that point. He never said anything to me. And he logged off, and I never saw, and I added him to my friends list because I wanted to see whenever he logged on. But he never he never logged on again, at least when I was on. So maybe he changed his name or something.
I hope he changed his name in real life. Completely shifted his identity to avoid paying $80. But, that was, like, really early at the start of StarCraft 2. Like, I think you said within the first 2 months of it being released.
Yeah. It was back in August, and I think the game came out in July.
Yeah, July 27th. I did a launch party that day. It was totally stressful that date. It's always going to be implanted in my mind. And, I know that you continue to play in tournaments, and the first live tournament I ever saw you at was the MLG Dallas Championships in 2010, the one that Liquid Jinro eventually won.
Yeah, that was actually the first LAN tournament I have ever participated in, ever. Like, I guess like high profile, low profile LAN tournaments. It doesn't even matter. That was the first LAN tournament I ever played in at all. I've never participated in any Colorado LANs. So that was like a definitely like a new feeling for me because I've definitely like obviously like some of my friends and I would like have like a LAN party and be like, oh man, come over and set up your computer at my house, whatever, blah blah blah. And I would get to experience what it's like to play on someone else's setup other than my own, and that in itself is like, if you're not used to that, it can be pretty nerve wracking. It's just like you don't play good at all because you're not comfortable in the setting you're playing on.
Yeah.
So that was definitely something I was thinking about, and then I like that's one aspect of it, and then the other aspect is like you're playing with like a live audience, and that's something else I really haven't experienced. And I would say it's actually kind of cool, like how much StarCraft has grown. Because the first LAN event I went to, it was like 6 bleachers on 2 sides of the room, and it was like the bleachers could hold like 10 people per bleacher. So it was like 120 people could sit down on these bleachers, and then the rest of the people could sit on the floor in like a little tiny room like off on the side of the event center. It was, it was pretty. It was pretty. Like I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought that was just standard. But after seeing what events have been like throughout 2011 and 2012, it's pretty awesome how much it's grown. So,
what was your first game like there at the tournament? Like your first LAN tournament, your first ever game, but you were a Masters level Zerg at that point, so it wasn't like it was a total easy blowout no matter who you were up against.
Well, I had already kind of established who's pretty good and who's not, I guess, throughout playing.
It's a fine term to use. It's totally legal here.
It's kind of mean to say, but it's I just had these opponents that I would regularly play against on ladder and stuff through while practicing before I actually attended the event. And I remember just when I looked at the player pool, who's actually attending, I remember seeing a few names that I was like, okay, I know him. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. And when they actually announced the player bracket, when they like opened up the bracket to be able to see who you're going to play against, I remember I had to play against TT1 in the first round, who's actually one of my teammates now. But I remember when I saw TT1 in the first round, all I could think of is I lose to this guy every single time online. I never beat him because he was one of the Prodosses that actually understood how you could be so greedy back then. And I would like my average game against him would be like, I'm Zerg, I have like 100 supply at like I don't even know what the time. I don't think the game timer was back in the game at that point. But I would be at like 100 supply. He'd be like 120 supply. He'd actually be ahead of me. It's like kind of reverse of what ZVP is right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd be like, I don't understand how he has so much. And it's because he's like the master of chronoing Nexuses and making tons of pros. Not even going like Nexus first. So he was a pretty greedy player, and I knew it, but I didn't really know how to punish it back then. I was like kind of learning the game myself. And I just knew that I was probably going to lose playing against him. And I actually, to kind of go in further into that, like, I remember when I first played against him, the first game I played him in that tournament, in the LAN tournament in Dallas, I actually won the first game, and then I started getting so nervous because I was like, wow, I actually beat him. And I wasn't expecting that at all, but this is going to be pretty awesome if I can actually 2-0 him, or like maybe even 2-1 him, and move on to the next round.
Of course. I mean, anytime you get a win in a tournament, your brain immediately is like, well, what happens if we go all the way and win the championship?
Yeah,
you got to keep the
exactly.
brain in check, man.
Like, I wasn't sure what to expect, man, because I wasn't, like, playing, I didn't feel like I was playing my best because it wasn't a comfortable home setup. And then he himself is a really good player, so I was just really nervous to play against him. And when I beat him in the first game, and then in the second game, it ended up being close by ground spawned on Metalopolis, so you're really close to each other. And I was like, you know what, since I know we're close by each other, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to all-in him and just hope it works. And I went for like a 2-base Roachling all-in. And I just about killed him. It was like on the verge of him. I was like waiting for him to type it out, like GG. But he never did. And then he started like little by little holding my attacks. And he started like gaining ground back on me. And he started like just barely pushing me back. And then it ended up being like to this point where we kind of broke even. And I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to take a third at the gold right between our bases and just try and like establish a fighting point, like maybe with spines or something. And I was like, maybe I'll be able to edge out the win here. And then he ended up he just eventually beat me that game, and I started getting really nervous throughout that game, and I felt like I almost had it, and it would have been really awesome if I would have won, because I would have beat someone who's already established as a really good player. And he ended up beating me, so we were tied 1-1. And then going into that third game, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, man, I'm really nervous right now, but I almost had that. I can actually do this. I can actually win. And this is a pretty cool feeling, because this is my first LAN ever. I've never experienced this before, but I feel like I can actually compete with some of the really good players. And then I remember in the third game, I don't know who it was behind me, but I could hear people talking behind me in the third game. And there was, like, I think one of the standard build openings against Protoss back then was like a Speedling opening against Protoss. And I was like sending Speedlings at TT1 on Scrap Station. And he was like walling off his natural or something. And I remember he had this like one little open door. And what he did was he actually let my Lings kind of come in his base. But what he did was he cut my Lings in half. Like half of them came in, half of them got stuck outside by a force field.
Yeah, you just zapped right through him, man.
And then instead of letting my Lings get killed on both sides, because now they're kind of just like sectioned away and not really in good positions anymore, what I did was I actually really quickly grabbed my Lings outside of his base and inside his base. I sent the Lings outside of his base kind of away so they didn't die, and then I sent my Lings inside his base, all around his base, and I scouted immediately. And then I remember hearing people behind me, and they're like, "Oh, this guy has pretty good micro." And I heard that, and I got like, I don't know why, but I let that really get to my head, and I kind of just like fell apart. I was like, oh, people think I'm good.
Yeah.
Like 3 seconds later, I completely took that statement away, because my screen went to like the middle of the map where the Zanaga Tower is, and you see like 6 or 7 drones kind of just running towards TT1's base, doing nothing other than wasting time. And I'm like, oh my god, what am I doing? And then I ended up having to like, after that point, I was like, I'm totally botching this game now. I'm falling apart. I got like a third of my economy out in the middle of nowhere on the map. And then he ended up doing like a push after that. And I was so nervous throughout the rest of that game that he ended up just like crushing me. But Like after that point too, I made a rule for myself that every event I go to, I just always bring an iPod now, and I put music on under my headphones, like a little iPod earbuds, like under my headphones, and I have music like blaring in my ears with game sounds at 100% volume, so I can't hear anything, or like I can hear very little around me. So that definitely helps, and that's something I feel like that's like the main thing I feel like I learned from that first
Yeah,
event
yeah.
is distractions.
And I remember that the following day you played a Zerg vs. Zerg against Rain. It was your first ever casted match. I
Yeah,
remember you were saying.
that was actually an awesome experience because I remember the way that format was actually set up was I was actually like where there was like a main stage table basically. Like if you're sitting at this table, you're probably gonna get broadcast because it was like stations 1 through 3 or something, and that was like probably 30 feet away from where the broadcasters actually were, like right behind us. So I remember that when on the second day when I was in the loser bracket round one, and they told me like you're playing at station one by the way at like 11:45 or something. I was like, oh my god, that might mean I'm getting broadcast. That's awesome. And then I remember sitting down, and then they told me like you're gonna get broadcast like on the live stream, and like after the first game, and I was like, that was a pretty amazing feeling for me because just knowing that I'm gonna get broadcast to everyone who's watching MLG, I just felt like I had to win because that's all people are gonna remember is if you win or lose. Like if you win, people might remember like, oh yeah, that guy won that game, but if you lose, people are gonna be like, who? Who's that?
You're deleted from the brain instantly.
Yeah, exactly. I had to win, man.
So I mean, I know that kind of heading into 2011, you were continuing to try to like make a name for yourself by streaming a ridiculous ton of hours all the time, trying to go to all the tournaments. What was 2011 like? How did that start to pan out for you? Because I know you eventually got invited to the NASL.
Yeah, well, 2011, that's actually when I was already on Six Jacks dot Energy, which eventually just became Six Jacks. And I was basically a sponsored player at that point, and I was getting sent to events. And in 2011, I was in 3 leagues that I would say helped me break out to like get more known in the scene, and those were MLG, NASL, and IPL. And in MLG in 2011, I actually had 2 runs through the open bracket where I made the championship bracket. And I didn't go very far in the championship bracket. I think I made it in one of those runs to like round 4 championship bracket. And then in the other one, I made it to like round 2 championship bracket. But I still, being able to say you made it there is like an accomplishment in itself because the open bracket's pretty rough. And I think that like just being able to say that I made the championship bracket was pretty good in itself. And then
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, from there, I played in. I had a pretty cool run through IPL. I remember uh, I had a few pretty good games where I beat a few high-profile people that people thought I was going to lose against. Like I remember I beat Minigun, I beat Phoenix, I beat I beat a few other people. I can't remember
I mean,
everyone.
did the games feel close, or did
Yeah,
they?
like
Just,
they were. My games against Minigun
mhm,
were like
mhm.
base trades all down. Like it was like coming down to the last building basically, and whoever wins, like whoever kills the building is the winner. My games against Minigun were really close, and then my games against Phoenix, I think my series against him was 2-1. But that series against Phoenix was probably my biggest game I played early on in 2011 because uh, I I was one of the first Zergs I'd say that really took Nidus to another level, and I was like Nidusing
I like
everyone
it.
in and there was actually one of my games against Phoenix. I can remember it was on Metalopolis, and I made like we were going back and forth like Mutiling, Baneling, whatever against Bio Tank, and then the game kind of turned into like 5 base Zerg versus like a 4 base Terran, and I made Niduses all throughout his natural, his main, his fourth, his third. Like I was bouncing back and forth, and I was denying base after base after base, and I was just like pulling them apart everywhere with like probably 10 consecutive Niduses, and then it was just like a really cool game. And then I remember uh, after that game, one of the producers or one of the guys who works with IPL, he was like telling me how my game's getting like voted as like the most watched game or most wanted to be watched game out of all of them, out of like the whole IPL for
That's
that
so
one.
awesome.
And I was like, yeah, that's fucking awesome, man, because now I know that like people are actually watching my games and thinking I'm like that I'm an entertaining
Uh
player
huh.
basically. And that was probably one of the biggest moments for me in 2011. And then I eventually ended
Hmm.
up getting like fourth in that tournament or fifth. I ended up losing to
Yeah,
Kiwikaki, loser bracket
it's kind of hard not
semifinal.
to lose to Kiwikaki, to be
Yeah,
honest.
Like every time I played against Hibikaki in every tournament, I would always lose. He was actually one of my practice partners back throughout a lot of StarCraft 2 before he ended up retiring. And throughout our practice games, I'd say I won maybe like 20% of the games, 30 games. But every time we played a tournament, I would lose every time. So that was always unfortunate. And then finally, like the other league, I would say this league invited me because I had some success through NLG and IPL. And that third league was NASL. They actually did like this thing where the system where they would have people submit a YouTube application of like a video of yourself saying why you should be in the league. And I submitted one, and I ended up getting invited. And then I remember seeing on the forums all the time, like people would have this like list, like a top 5 list of who shouldn't be in the league. And I was always like on that list. I always made the list. So that was always a little unfortunate. But I never really,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm a player that really like lets the community really like get me down. I'm not like, people don't think I should be in it, so I should probably just bow out. I was like,
Uh
whatever,
huh.
I'll just
Uh huh.
run. And I ended up, I feel like a few of my seasons of NASL, I never really had like a breakout season, but I always did well enough. I always beat a few people that were like everyone in the league is pretty good, and I always managed to beat a few of them to be able to like maintain my spot for the next season. So I always did well enough to stay. And then yeah, I just had a few moments I would say in 2011 that were definitely like a few key moments that I did well. But I would say 2012 has definitely been my year where I've had like a consistent breakout performance.
Yeah, I mean, I know that like in 2011, I mean, especially from talking to you like before this interview, you said that you were continuing to do well, but you didn't have like the amazing explosion onto the scene. There wasn't like Vibe Day that happened in 2011 per se, and that sort of heading into 2012, where did you feel like you were at just in your StarCraft career right when it began? Were you comfortable supporting yourself? Were you feeling really confident? Were you feeling like, I don't have what it takes to get ahead? Like, what? How were you feeling mentally?
Yeah, well, back in 2011, that's actually when I was playing a lot on like North American server only, and then I found out that a few, not many, but a couple of my friends, like one of them was Response. He, like the Protoss player Response, if you guys know who that is, he was actually playing on the Korean server, and he's actually the one that inspired me to get the Korean server as well. And I feel like as soon as I actually made the switch and started practicing a lot on the Korean server instead of just exclusively on NA, I feel like that's where my skills started to jump a lot because the Korean server is pretty challenging. Like it's extremely challenging. Like it's you'll never find an easy game there. Like you might get all in a lot, but every game definitely pushes you to the limit to make you a better player. And I feel like that's in 2011. I kind of like went back and forth, Korea server, not Korea server, Korea server, not Korea server. But in 2012, I definitely I
Mm-hmm.
almost exclusively practice on Korea, and I would say that's one of the things that definitely I feel like
Yeah.
I guess I felt like a good player in 2011. Like I'm going to elaborate on the other part of that question, but in 2011, I felt like I was a good player, but I always like stressed myself out because I expected results out of myself. I'd be like, all right,
Yeah.
I, I'm a good player. I expect myself to do well, but then when I go to events, I might have a couple events where I do pretty well, but I'm never getting like top threes or first place even. And I would always get like top 32s or like top 16s, top 20s, whatever. I would always do pretty well, but not well enough for people to really recognize you. And then in 2012, with my not only with my now exclusively Korea practice and then custom games, whatever, with teammates, I also ended up taking a break. And I think this break is what really kind of set my mindset to a different level. Like in 2012 when it first started, I also was going, I demand results from myself. I have to do well. And then as soon as Diablo 3 came out, I took a break. I was like, you know what? I'm just like stressing myself out. I'm pounding myself in the ground here by trying to demand results from myself, and I'm not ever getting them. For what I want. So I'm gonna take a break from the game. I'm gonna play Diablo 3 for like a month basically. And this actually coincided to be like a month before WCS USA. So I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna go to USA. I'll practice a few days before it with like Korea server, but for the most part, I'm just gonna have fun and go in with no expectations of myself, and I'm just gonna have fun with it. And I think that's the best thing I ever did because I actually went to WCS USA right after a month of playing a different game than
Uh
StarCraft,
huh.
and I just didn't care. I was like, I'll just have fun. And as soon as I started beating people that I knew were already really good as well, and they could potentially be the winners of the tournament as well, like State, like Idra, like Hawk, like
Yeah.
pretty much a lot of people in that bracket, I was like, well, I'm actually winning consistently right now, and I think this is the fact that I don't care is whole new mindset. I haven't experienced it, and I'm going to try to keep this mindset a lot. It's definitely improving me. So
Well, I am totally going to interject right now and begin zooming in on each of those individual matches when we come back for part three.
yep.
Yes, because in part three, I want to get the chance to ask you about like that lead up to the WCS NA finals. Or the US finals, and then of course the NA finals, and of course ask your thoughts on the upcoming Shanghai. So whatever you do, if you're watching live right now, please continue to hang out because we'll be back for part three. If you're watching on the archives, go watch part three. See you in a bit.